Okay. All right. Well, thank you everyone for attending today's training on Canvas for large classes. I'll go over a little introductory information here and then pass it along to Laura. Today's session, along with all the other training sessions this week, are being recorded and you'll have the option of viewing it again later. And due to the large number of participants that may be jumping in and out of the session, we have muted your microphones by default. If you have a question, please use the chat feature located at the bottom of the screen to send those questions in, and then I'll compile them and give them to Laura at the end of the training. I wanted to start today's session by sharing some information that we're including in all the training sessions. If you're a brand new to remote or online teaching, we recommend that you visit and explore the resources on the K-State Keep Teaching website at ksu.edu/keep-teaching. And the Preparing and Planning page under Remote Teaching and Learning Resources tab has a checklist of steps to get you started. The homepage of the website also includes getting started checklists for students as well as faculty. And I'm going to provide a link for that here in a minute to that website. As we rapidly transition our classes using various remote teaching options, we want to encourage you to keep things as simple as possible. And this session is going to focus on practical steps you can implement right away. If you have additional questions after today's session, please send them to gcid@kstate.edu. This email address is being monitored by the Global Campus Instructional Design Team, and all inquiries will be responded to as quickly as possible. You can also contact the IT Help Desk by phone at 785-532-7722 or via email at helpdesk@ksu.edu. And I'll also drop these links into the chat. And then lastly, please also check out the K-State Keep Teaching training sessions page to see if there are other sessions that can provide helpful information as you transition to remote teaching. There's a schedule online that has all the Zoom sessions with the Zoom links as well. And then once again, your microphones are muted by default. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll address them as we go. With that, I will pass it along to you, Laura.
All right, thank you so much. So we're presenting this session in partnership with Kathleen Haas-Cruz. She is an instructor in food, nutrition, dietetics, and health with a very large class online, and so she has some expertise in this area for sure. So I am going to have my chat turned off, so Reed will let me know if we have any questions or if Kathleen can jump in and answer them. We should be good to go. But I'm going to start by just talking through remote teaching and some of the challenges that we're facing right now. This is certainly not something we expected to deal with this semester, and so we understand that this is tough for a lot of people, and wrapping our heads around how we're going to make this happen is pretty challenging. So we want to support you in any way that we can to kind of change the way that we're teaching this semester. We want to encourage you to be human, that we are not in any way expecting perfection. We want to work with our students, let them know that we're there, that we are available to them, that we understand this is hard. So we want to make sure that we are putting ourselves in their shoes as well, that they may not have access to their textbooks right now. They may not have access to strong internet. Some of them may not even have access to a computer. So we need to be flexible and really see how we can get to the core of our teaching objectives, our outcomes for the course, and really focus in on those. But it's also important that we set the tone and that we are supporting our students and that we're being positive as much as we can be, that this is hard, but we're going to get through it and we're going to make the best of it. Really important for us to communicate expectations of what this new environment is going to look like, how we're going to be communicating with students, how we're going to expect them to show that they have achieved the learning outcomes. And that can kind of change throughout the next several weeks too, as you figure out what works and what doesn't. Using sort of an FAQ format or layout can really help students, and I'm going to let Kathleen talk about that and textbook access for just a second.
Okay, one thing I did want to add also in the put yourself in their shoes, be very careful not to assume that your students are digital natives, or even that your digital natives are going to understand how to use the course system. So just because they can use a cell phone doesn't mean they necessarily understand how to search your website and access content. So just be aware that they might struggle with that, especially the more anxious they get about this situation, the less likely they're going to be able to just stop and think critically about where this could possibly be on a website. So that being said, that actually leads nicely into the FAQs. I have a list of FAQs linked in my syllabus. It's something I've done for quite some time, simply because a lot of students tend to ask the same questions. And yes, they're not necessarily going to read your FAQs, but they are there as a resource for you to send them if they have a question that you've already answered. It saves you typing time. I still write the student back by email and I say, hey, that's a great question. I've answered it here. Here's the FAQ and here's the link. So that's what I've done with my FAQs. They're linked in my syllabus, but you guys could put them wherever you want. And I'm going to be working with Laura to provide some examples of what I have. Most of my FAQs are very specific to my course. So they may not necessarily be useful in terms of their actual content, but what their topics are might be useful. Regarding textbook access, if you're on this call, you are a teacher of a large course, which means that with textbook publishers, you're going to have a bit of power. They want to keep your business for future semesters. So talk to your publisher. I was desperate. I didn't know what to do about my students who had left their textbooks at home. Dr. Fees over at College of Health and Human Sciences said, well, just talk to your publisher. So I did. And they provided an online copy just for the semester, but for my students to have access to their textbooks. So I would use your power as a teacher of a large online course to say to your textbook reps, like, these are students who have already purchased a textbook who left it, it's in their dorms or whatever. They need online access. Or talk to their competitors or whomever you need to get your students their online only materials. But again, you have a lot of power being someone that they want to cultivate and want to keep for semesters to come. Yeah, I'll turn it back over to Laura. Did I get everything?
That sounds great.
Okay.
Thanks. All right, so let's move on here. So we're talking about large classes in Canvas, and large to me is 50 plus, 40 can be a lot too, but just thinking about how we can break that down, make the content available to our students, and make the class feel a little bit smaller. So one of the things we're definitely trying to focus on is asynchronous learning. Creating short recordings, putting up online resources so that students that don't have consistent access to the internet can still learn. A lot of folks have been thinking, oh, well, I'll do class synchronously at the same time that I had class during the week normally. So Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2 o'clock. That may not work for some of our students because their schedules have now changed. They may be either trying to work or they may have family now at home, children, relatives that make it so that they can't do their regular campus schedule. So thinking about if you do a live session, recording that and making that available to everyone in an asynchronous way as well. So thinking about the tools that we have in Canvas, how can we make those, make all of that information available to students? And one of the most important pieces of that is the communication and being present in that Canvas environment. So you want to use announcements a lot. You can email within Canvas. You can email within your K-State email, but announcements will appear right within the Canvas course, and they will be available to all students when they log in. So you could email students and also do an announcement. Those are really good ways to make sure that students have the most current information and feel that you are there and a part of the class. Making sure that we provide regular feedback to them on where things are, how can we get through this together is really important. Try to anticipate a lot of those questions, and that's related to the FAQ, but you could even create a questions discussion board so that students are sending their inquiries to one location, and you or fellow students are all answering those questions in one place as well. And so that's a good way to kind of gather all those questions together and make sure that everybody can see the answers.
Laura, is it okay if I jump in here?
Absolutely,
Okay.
Go for it.
So I'll talk about what I do. If you want actual film of me doing it in my course, you're welcome to check out that video series that a bunch of us put together on the Keep Teaching website, where I show you specifically what I do for my course. But one of the things that I create each week is just a to-do list for my students. Canvas makes it really nice because you can link everything in a page, and there's a great video also on how to use pages in Canvas in the same section of videos. I create a page that has everything in it that's important for the week. Includes my office hours, just general course resources. And the nice thing about Canvas is copy and paste. So I leave that to-do list up on my website, but I also copy and paste all that information into an announcement that I send out at the beginning of the week. The one thing that is a bit frustrating about announcements in Canvas is that they don't necessarily go to the student's KSU email unless the student has set up their access, set up their notifications so that they get that access, they get those emails. And so that is something that they do need to go, Laura's showing you right now, they need to go to account, they need to go to notifications, and they do need to set up that. So they get an email to their KSU email every single time they get a notification, every single time someone posts to a discussion board, and someone posts to a submission comment, and someone posts to an announcement. That's the other thing with those message boards. I like to use those course message boards. Just remind your students, it sounds like a YouTuber, like and subscribe, to make sure they're subscribed to those message boards. And then again, that they have notifications set up properly so they can get an email about those different announcements and message boards. So that's one of the FAQs that I do have that would probably be relevant for more than one person, that I'll try to figure out some way to send to Laura and give her access to those. What else? Well, can we go back to the slide, Laura?
Yeah,
Sorry.
Sure, no problem.
I got going and then I stopped. Regular feedback, communication, and just and this is probably, and I'm not trying to insult anybody if you know all this stuff already. I apologize, but even if you have FAQs, even if you have a message board, even if you have all these things, whenever a student emails you, just write them back. And sometimes all you're writing back is, hey, this is on the course website, here's the link. Or, hey, that's a great question, I'm going to put it in the message board, and then other students can read that too, and then you can get your answer there in the message board. It just acknowledges that, yeah, I know it's on the website, and if you would just read the website, you would have figured it out, but you didn't. So I'm gonna, here's me acknowledging your presence. Here's the link. I always give them direct links. Thank you so much, and let me know if you have any further questions. And that's kind of, I know it takes time, but they really value that that interaction.
Yeah, it's going to be very, very important that we stay on top of our email. I'm going to go back to notifications because this can help you as well, thinking about your courses and how you are receiving feedback from them. You can see right here with the discussions, I actually have it set here on the calendar. I'm only going to receive a weekly update because the courses that I'm a part of aren't things that I need to be getting daily messages on, okay? But if I were teaching actively, I would change this to the check mark so that I was getting daily notifications, or I'm sorry, when they are posting, you can see here, notify me right away that a posting was made to a discussion board. So I would have these both as the check mark. Then conversations, which is also your K-State or your global, your Canvas inbox is conversations. I would also change that to the direct check marks so that I know when those conversations, when those inquiries come in right away. The final one is announcements. Students can't create announcements, but they can respond to announcements. So making sure if you're watching that to know whether or not students have made an inquiry based on an announcement that you made.
Unless you don't want them to be able to respond to announcements, and then you can shut that off.
That's true. That's true. Good point, Kathleen. You can also get updates every time someone submits something, but as long as you're staying on top of your assignments and your quizzes, I wouldn't necessarily say check that one because that could become rather unwieldy, especially in a large class size. So just making sure that you are maintaining, watching your gradebook, watching your assignments, and being on top of the grading process can be really good. So setting up your own notifications is really important, but then also directing your students to set up their notifications properly is a really good idea. All right, back to the presentation here. All right, so think about organizing your course intuitively. And so you need to think about, as a student jumps in here, they may not be very familiar with Canvas as well. So how can you guide them through the content very, very clearly? So modules is the piece of Canvas that kind of pulls all of the other pieces together. And I can walk you through a module if we need to. You can pull files in, you can pull videos in, you can pull assignments in, you can pull discussions in. Everything can be within that module. So you can have a weekly module, week 1, week 2, well, in this case, week 8, week 9, right? And just start for there so they know exactly where to find everything. One of the strengths of Kathleen's course is that she does a great job of cross-listing everything. She links everything together so that students can't not find things. They find a way to still not find things, but there's really very clear connections with everything that you need to do. So another piece of that is including all of the information that they need to be successful in assignments. I'm going to jump out again real quick to Canvas.
And I would also suggest that I would recommend that you shut off access to everything but modules, maybe your syllabus. The more things that you have open, like say you have quizzes, they can go to quizzes, they can go to assignments, they can go to files, they can go to pages, they can go to all this different stuff. That just really generates some confusion with them. Plus, it makes it very hard for you to keep things private. So if you basically eliminate their access to files, to pages, to quizzes, to assignments, and just go through modules, that forces them to go into just one place to find everything. And that minimizes a lot of the confusion that they'll have trying to access different parts of the course.
Fantastic point, definitely. So one thing I would encourage you to keep available to students is grades, so they can see their progression through the information. But you could just have your modules. You could have a syllabus linked as a document, so you don't even necessarily have to have that. The announcements could also be linked the way that I have them here. So you could simply have even just your home page, which is your link to modules, and that's all that students say. So that in modules, you have everything you need right there. I have a link to a video right here. This is an article. This is a page that then has more information, links to articles, all of my learning information right there. Going back one step, I have a discussion board right here. I have an assignment right here. So it just pulls everything together into one place. So in my assignment, I'm also cross-listing the worksheets or the pages that the students, in this case, these are all faculty in our online essentials course, need to complete in order to do the assignment. So adding instructions into your assignment as well and cross-listing any of the learning materials there is very good. I could also, if I wanted to, right in this instructions, I could add a video. So I'm going to go, oops, not to that one. There's so many different ones. Go right here, go to my media site, presentation. And we have great presentations on my media site and another one about recording your presentations coming up very soon. So those are all happening as well. I encourage you to attend those. We don't want to take too much time in this session about that. But there, I've just added a video right into this instructions right here. So if that were my lecture, then I would have been able to add that right into the assignment itself. All right. I'm going to check in with Reed here. Do we have any questions coming up right now, Reed?
No, so far we don't have any questions coming through the chat.
Okay, sounds good. We'll just keep plugging along. Okay, let's see. We're gonna... Okay, let's talk a little bit about groups in Canvas. Groups are a great tool to help a large class feel a little bit smaller. You do this under people, and I'll show you in just a second, but it's a good way to break that larger group into smaller sections that can be used for group projects, for discussions, just kind of reducing the impact of the entire class. You still would have your learning materials all within a module, but then communication becomes a little bit smaller scale. We recommend that you do no less than 5, but no more than 10 people per group, because you don't want it to be so small that if a few people aren't able to interact, that then there is very limited ability for the group to be successful. But more than 10, it becomes overwhelming. There are great guidelines here in this community. Whoops, sorry. This Canvas guide on giving clear expectations and how the groups work. But let me show you real quick how you would set up a group, a small group in Canvas. So you come to people here. And this is where your roster is going to be, which is going to be really rather long in a large class, right? So you would set up a group by clicking on Add Group Set. And that would allow you to set the the group name. You can do self-sign up, but usually I recommend that you decide how many students are in the group and that you can then use Canvas to sort those students and create those groups. So these are the discussion groups that were created for this Online Essentials class. You can say we have 5 students per group, and then those students have sort of smaller areas to look at, and it does not want to go. Let me hold on. Visit group homepage. Less clutter, if you will, in their communication. So here's a discussion board that we did that was only this small group. So now those students you're setting up that discussion board in the larger community, but you're assigning it to groups rather to all students. And then there's just less for students to consume as they go through the conversations. They aren't quite as overwhelmed. If you think about, let's say you have a discussion and you have 50 students and you want every student to reply to the discussion and then 2 responses to their students, to other students, that becomes 150 things to read. That's going to be a little bit overwhelming for students, certainly as overwhelming for all of you as well. But breaking it down can help those students consume the information. Do you have anything to add on groups, Kathleen?
No, but just alert the students that so you will build your discussion board or your group assignment in your main Canvas page. But once the student clicks on their version of that assignment from the main Canvas page, it's going to kick them into their own mini Canvas page related to their group. And some students can get confused by that switch and that transition. One of the things I do is at the bottom of my discussion instructions, I'll embed a link that will take them back to the main course page. So
that's a great way to do it.
If they get confused, or they all of a sudden they're in their group, they may not realize they're in their group page and then go try to find other stuff on the course website and they're like, where is it? They're not in the course website anymore. Yeah, so I will put a link like back to modules, which you can easily link in your discussion instructions, and that way they can see that link and go back to the main course site.
So another way to navigate back, if you talk students through it, is if they're clicking on the group level here, then they're going to get to the name of the course right here, and then that gets them back to modules as well. So it can be a little tricky to navigate, but it does work well to kind of break up the content so they don't feel quite as overwhelmed. It can also help in your gradebook itself, because as you're grading, you can then look at your gradebook just by that smaller group. So here is my group 1 and all of their assignments. These are all faculty, not students, so I'm not sharing any of that information, but it is just that group rather than the entire class. So that can help you kind of manage that content as well. All right, let's go back here. Okay, so let's talk about assessments a little bit, because this is definitely something that is weighing on a lot of people right now. A lot of you are probably much more familiar with doing, multiple choice, especially in those large courses. How do you handle quizzes, exams, assignments in an online environment? So we are definitely struggling with the idea of proctoring right now. We're not really thinking this is going to be available to students as an option. So what we're recommending is that you think through your exam and how you can manage it in an unproctored platform. being more flexible with your students, maybe building your assessment so that it is open book, open notes. You're setting that expectation that that is available. You want to think about shuffling the answers so that students can't just share, okay, the answers were A, B, C, A, you know, that kind of thing. And think about using question banks so that the questions themselves are varied from student to student. So if you have a question bank of 50 questions and each student receives 30 questions, they're not all going to take the exact same quiz. It's a way to kind of control the environment and what students may or may not share. And then giving feedback to students is very important as well. But you
Well,
want to think about, yeah, did you have
oh, I was
something?
just gonna, can I jump in to talk about exams and
Absolutely.
quiz? So I have my basic nutrition course always has parallel online and on-campus only courses. And I actually give roughly the same exam to the online only students and to the on-campus only students, with a couple variations. The on-campus students are not allowed to bring any types of notes, any type of open book, anything like that. I decided early on not to bother with proctoring, and I've never had my online exams proctored, and they are open note. And surprisingly enough, the online only students tend to do the worst on my exams compared to my on-campus students who don't have their notes, don't have their book. And there's a couple reasons for this. First, even though they're warned to study, they don't think they have to because it's open book, open note. The other thing I do is I set a time limit. So everybody across all of my sections, doesn't matter if you're a Tuesday, Thursday class, doesn't matter if you're online, that exam is limited to 50 minutes. So you can only look up so much information in 50 minutes if you didn't study for the test. Eventually you're going to run out of time. To make the time a little bit longer, I mean, as in it takes longer for an online only student to answer a question, therefore they need to know the answer before they even, start, is I use a lot of fill in the blank. I use some calculation questions. They don't get a multiple choice option. They have to actually put that number in. So they have to do the math and put that number in. There's not an option for them to guess from. So they're essay questions, things like that, to sort of level the playing field, so to speak, between those students that don't get to use their materials and those students that do. And then the other thing I do is I try to ask questions that they can't Google the answer to. So I teach nutrition. This may or may not work depending on your subject, but maybe you can find something to adapt. Like, for example, instead of a question that says carbohydrates provide X amount of calories per gram, you can Google that. I will show them a food label. I'll give them a picture of a food label that has carbohydrates blanked out. And they have to tell me, based on the total calories and based on how much protein and fat there is, they have to tell me how many grams of carbohydrate are in that food label based on all this other information. You can't Google the answer to that. So that's another thing I do, is to make those tests very much real world application. Look at a grocery list, pick out all the foods that are ultra processed. Again, can't Google that. So that to me makes that exam just hard enough that they have to study, and then they have to know the material in order to be able to succeed, whether they can look it up online or not. That's all I have.
Great points. Thank you. So the settings in the exam itself, here's where you do the time limit. Now here on this one, I have multiple attempts. If this is a low stakes kind of thing, you're just wanting students to kind of check their own knowledge, you can certainly offer multiple attempts. But if this is one of your midterm or final exams, you probably don't want to do that. The thing we want to caution is this: let's see students see their quiz responses. You don't want to check that if you're allowing students to complete the exam, your entire class to complete the exam over several days, because those students would have the opportunity to kind of screenshot and share those questions and answers with other students in the class. Hopefully they don't do that. We want to assume that our students are going to be honest, right? But if you have this turned off, then students would not be able to see their responses or the answers after that. Now you could go in and open it up and show them the correct answers after everyone has completed the exam, but have it turned off while they're taking the exam. And also a caution about trying to set it so that everyone takes the exam at like your normal class period over that 50-minute window that you may have had. That doesn't work very well in the online environment because Canvas controls the length of the exam by the until date and time. So you may give students 50 minutes to complete an exam, but if for some reason they are delayed and it's 5 minutes before your time limit at the until date or the until time and date, it will cut them off and they will only have the 5 minutes. So think about a day-long window, an entire afternoon if you want to restrict it a little bit, but not just the 1 hour that they would have taken it on campus. Be a little bit flexible in opening that up to them. All right. I think I showed you the gradebook and how it looks if you're in the small group setting. You can also kind of arrange your gradebook by what's missing. And so you would be able to catch those things that you may not have graded yet and kind of group by that. And that would help as well. So I think that's all that we have for the presentation. I'm seeing several little comments, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen at the moment and see if we can answer some of the questions.
Real quick, about the gradebook, I wanted to insert 2 handy things for large classes.
Mm-hmm.
One of those is you can message students who.
Right.
So you can go to at the top of your gradebook column. There's
I'll
3.
go ahead and share real quick. Hold on.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I should have said that before
no
you
problem.
ducked out.
All right, so gradebook here. And so that's under.
It's at
No,
the
that's
top.
in
So
the
yeah,
assignment itself, right?
if you go to the top of
Yes,
an
there we go.
assignment. Sorry, I'm trying to do the chat at one time and then
Yep.
talk at the other. All right, yeah, so message students who, and you have multiple different options for this one. I use it most for students who have not completed an assignment. Usually the day of the assignment is due or the day of an exam. We will go ahead and message them, hey, don't forget, you need to take the exam today. Hey, don't forget, this discussion board is due today. My discussion boards have 2 separate due dates, and it's really confusing for students because they can only see the one. So we always make sure and email them the day that that's due so they know, hey, your first post. And again, this is something that if they don't have their notifications set up properly, they're not going to get these emails. But at least you can say to a student, hey, I emailed you on the day the assignment was due, so there's no excuse. Plus, the other thing that you can do is set default grades. That's the other handy tool that's from the same place there, Laura. And say you just finished like a quiz and you want to let all the students that didn't take the quiz know that they didn't take the quiz. Canvas likes to be a little quirky in the way it explains their grades. So if you want to give everybody who did not take the quiz a 0, you just put 0 out of 10 in that box. Make sure you do not check overwrite already entered grades. I learned that one the hard way. And then you would set the default grade, and everybody who did not take the quiz now has a 0 in their gradebook, and that will be reflected in their grade tally in their final grade. And that's just an easy way. Instead of having to go through and type 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0 all the way down, it does it automatically for you. So that's those are 2 very handy large class gradebook features.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, other questions? You're welcome to unmute yourself if you'd like to jump in, but you can also post to the chat, and it looks like Kathleen's jumped in quite a bit to answer a lot of questions. So what other questions do we have? All right, so it seems like everything's been answered. This will be recorded, and our previous session is, I believe, also already up, so we may have answered a few questions there that we didn't cover here. So on that training schedule, there should be a lot of the recordings already. We have sessions for the rest of today that will be posted, and then we have drop-in sessions all day Thursday and Friday. So if you have more questions after this, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and then provide kind of some follow-up information in case anyone joined in after our introduction. Once again, thank you everyone for being here for the training this morning. Please remember that if you have any additional questions, you can send them to gcid@kstate.edu. And this email address is being monitored by the Global Campus Instructional Design team, and they will be responding to that email as quickly as possible. You can also contact the IT Help Desk by phone at 785-532-7722 or via email at helpdesk@ksu.edu. And then also, like Lori mentioned, please check out the K-State Keep Teaching training sessions. And I will go ahead and drop all the links into the chat for you to access those. Other than that, thank you, Laura and Kathleen, for your presentation this morning.
Thanks, everyone. You have a great week, and hang in there.